to Detroit. So the presentation I'm going to give today is a presentation I gave to CanHITE, which stands for Canadian Higher Education IT Conference. I was in PEI about a month ago and I gave this presentation to a bunch of universities. And it was really fun to talk makerspaces to those folks because none of them are doing makerspaces, and we're kind of on the leading edge if we are able to launch our makerspace. And so there's a lot of text on this one. I promise you most of my slides are pictures. But this is nice just to kind of establish what we're doing. So when I talk there, I talk about acquiring and deploying technologies, funding opportunities, corporate community partnerships, engaging the broader university community. And actually I think that's kind of neat today to look around the room and see lots of folks from outside UNB, which is really nice for us to have you on campus. When I talk about hackerspaces and makerspaces, I'm typically going to use the word makerspace, and I'll talk a little bit about the differences there. Yeah, so instead of reading through that, let's jump into it. I was going to take this slide out today, but then I thought, oh, we'll see who's here from outside the university. So about UNB St. John, about 2,300 students, and that's a debatable number. So we never know when the marketing material comes out what that number is going to say, but right now I think 2,300 is fair. We do undergraduate, graduate, and PhD programs, faculties of business, arts, and science, and two-year engineering. And if I do something wrong, Ken, you'll be sure to correct me on the... Perfect. That's why I thought I'd put you on the spot. And I think these are the reason I bring these things up is because it shows that we have a broad range of students here. We have, all the way from undergrad to PhD, a broad range of disciplines, and I think that fits nicely into this makerspace idea. And this presentation is super interactive, so if you have any questions or if I confuse you at some point, please stop me and I'll back up. About me, I don't really like including these, but I think it might be important in this one. I'm the manager of academic technology services, so basically any student-facing technology on the campus impacts my department in some way, or we impact them in some way. And I think this is another important point, is that ISS, the group that I work for, encompasses both the library and the technology services side of things. So we're uniquely positioned to be able to offer these types of services. My background, I have a diploma in electronic engineering technology, and that's really old. That's probably maybe 20 years ago. And the funny thing about that is it sounds like I'd be perfect for the makerspace, but I'm really not that great with electronics and soldering. So, but then I have an undergrad in information and communication studies, so I like studying the social impact of technologies, where maybe my niche is, and a master's degree in interdisciplinary studies, where I look at knowledge economies and the intersection of technology and culture. And back to that video on Detroit, that's exactly what they're saying their makerspace is doing. It's that intersection. So, information systems and services. So it's the library and the IT group kind of bastardized and merged together. So let's start at the beginning, and this presentation will talk about makerspaces, we'll talk about what we're doing and where we're going, and hopefully we'll have lots of time just to really chat about it. So makerspaces come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. They serve as gathering points for tools, project mentors, and expertise. And I think this is an interesting point here. It's a collection of tools that does not define the makerspace. Rather, we define it by what we do, and that's making. And the reason I bring that up is because I think it's really easy to get a room and put a bunch of tools in the room and say, there you go, there's your makerspace. And I think that would be an utter failure, and that's not the approach we're going to take. And I'll get into how we're getting around that. Is anyone here like doing makerspace activities now? Or they're like involved? Are you making every day? Is anyone? Yeah, Peter is. And anyone else that's involved, that's making? Sean, of course, yeah. So that's a little bit telling, I suppose, that we're all here, hopeful and talking about it, but we're not really making. I'm not either. We have, one of the points I want to get across is that we don't have a makerspace. Is that we're trying to get a makerspace, and we will have a makerspace, but we don't have one now. And I think some of these points that I'm going to establish here are fairly interesting because we're doing some really great things already without the makerspace. And Sean, I'm not sure if I stole this from you or not, but the white, gray, and black spaces, is this a real term that people use, or
something I made up?
Something Sean made up. So I should have your name at the bottom of the... so back to this idea that MakerSpaces come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. I don't know how well you can see the pictures up here, but so I use some terms up here: high-tech, low-tech, white, gray, black spaces to describe MakerSpaces. And over here you see some ladies that are knitting, sewing. They're sewing, and that's a makerspace, right? People coming together to do creative things, and I think that's important. Over here is, I think it might be the Artisans Asylum in Boston, where they focus mainly on artists and things that artists are doing, and a makerspace geared towards those types of folks. And I think this one over here is Noise Bridge, which is formed in San Francisco about 5 years ago, and they do lots of electronics. So the reason I say this is because the makerspace is not just one thing, it's a multitude of things, or can be a multitude of things. And back to Sean's point about the white, gray, and black spaces, a white space would be more of an electronics hobbyist shop, very white coat. You don't get dirty in that space. Gray would be a space where maybe you have some electronics, but you also have some bigger tools. I don't know, maybe a chop saw or a table saw. A little bit dirty, but not super dirty. And then black spaces where you have bigger things, metal lathes and things like that. And these are important things to consider when you're thinking about building a makerspace, because what is it going to become in the end? Now, for the purposes of our talk, I think where we'll end up, at least originally at UNB, is probably in some sort of a white space with some high-tech equipment. So we'll have Raspberry Pis and Arduinos, and maybe a laser cutter would be kind of the extent of our foray into the gray space. But just to kind of set the stage for you, so if you were thinking we're going to get some metal lathes right off the top, that's really not our spot, and we don't think it will be for some time, but we'll see what the future holds for us. So why the heck would we do this? I guess is the question. The burning question on everyone's mind: why would we do this? So a few years back, we have a technology fee committee where we charge students a fee for technology. They pay into this fee every year, and we get a lot of money, and we all meet and we decide what are we going to do with the money. And often the thing that we do with the money is upgrading computer labs and those sorts of things. And a couple of years ago, I went to the committee and I said, "Oh, wouldn't it be great if we bought a 3D printer?" And they said, "Why would we buy a 3D printer? They're about $20,000. We have no use for it. That's a ridiculous idea." Okay, great. Fast forward a couple of years, I went to the committee and I said, "You know what we should have? A 3D printer." And they said the same thing. They're about $5,000, and we don't want one. Okay. So I went this year and I said, let's get a 3D printer, and the time was right. And we had lots of folks on the committee that thought that was a good idea. We allocated, I think, $5,000 to a 3D printer. I started making phone calls, 'cause I had no idea what they were costing at this point, and we picked up this one. And so it's not working right now, or I would demo it for you, I promise. But this is the MakerBot Replicator 2. The cool thing about the MakerBot, in the history of MakerBots, is that they were designed at New York City Resistor MakerSpace. So some lads that were working in a makerspace in New York City designed a robot that could extrude plastic, and kept working on that project, and they came up with the MakerBot, which is and I love to talk about the MakerBot. And I'll answer any questions I can about it. But the interesting thing is that it's commercially viable, so you can send these out, and a student can start printing on this right away. Now the downside of the MakerBot is that it breaks down sometimes. We've had some problems with the extruder, and we've had some problems with some of the chips on the main board. It's not hard to fix, but it takes time, and the parts take time. So we have this operating in the Commons, and let me fast forward here. in our Learning Commons. And if anyone's not been to the Learning Commons and you want to have a tour later on, just get a hold of me. I'd love to take you to the Commons. So we put the MakerBot in the Commons, and then we invited all of our students to come print to it, and they started printing to it, and they were enthralled. They loved printing to the 3D printer. When I would go to the front desk and work with the printer, I would have a group of students that would gather around to watch it print. And we were talking earlier about how we've seen these on YouTube and we see them printing. When I got it on my desk, I couldn't stop watching it. And then I had some problems, and Ken took it for a couple of months, Ken, to work away at it and solve some of the bigger problems that we have with it. Ken's in our engineering department. And I think your students had some...
solve any problems, they just played with it.
That counts. And your students played with it, right?
Yeah, they used it for projects that they were working on in one of their first course.
Yeah, and I thought that was really, and so some engineering students that were designing like a book page turning.
Peter knows more about that than I do.
We designed a machine. We give the first year design students a project to teach the theory of engineering design, but we get them to execute it in the form of a project. And the project we gave this year was a device to turn pages for a handicapped person. So it had to be non-manually operated, like with a blowpipe or something like that, and automatically turn pages in a variety of sizes of books. And out of 10 projects, I think 5 or 6 of them actually worked. Which I thought was pretty good.
Yeah, and what I thought was really cool about that is I've seen lots of impacts of the 3D printer where people are printing trinkets and novelty things, but this was something where students were designing things and then printing them on the 3D printer, and actually there was some utility to them, right? And
that's a kind of a firm rule we have. We're not allowed to download stuff from the internet.
Perfect, yeah.
So what do you design, like AutoCAD or?
SolidWorks.
Oh, okay.
So this is a real practical application. So what started to happen really quickly in the Commons is that students would come in and they would bring a file, and the way they print now is they come to the Commons and they say, how do I print? And we say, oh, send your email to this person and they'll make sure your file is okay. Okay, what format is it in? Oh, it's in this format. So there's this back and forth that happens. But what happened really quickly is we figured students really want to print. They want to design, they want to play with it. So that's when we started talking about the MakerSpace. And the nice thing about working at UNB St. John is that we're pretty small. So I could walk down the hall and I could talk to Ken, and I could talk to Peter, and I could talk to the computer science folks. And we started talking about what could we do. And we didn't really know it was going to be a MakerSpace at that point. We just knew we wanted to get students working with technology. So we were able to tie this back to our mission statement. And I know this might not be super applicable to folks outside the institution, but one of the things we say, one of the grandiose things we say in our mission statement is that we will provide an exceptional and transformative education for our students by encouraging initiative and innovation, unlocking their creative potential. And somewhere it says something about spaces, but transformative education. So I'll stick with that. I thought it said something about spaces, but maybe I made that part up. But we can tie this back into our mission statement that we're trying to provide creative opportunities. Yeah, exactly. And I think universities are uniquely positioned to embrace the maker movement by providing multidisciplinary support. And that's what we figured out right away when we got our MBA folks in the room and our engineers and our computer scientists, that, oh, this would be a great spot because here I am working on a project and I don't know how to design a circuit board. Somebody can help me. I don't know how to do a business plan. The business folks are here to help me. So we think we're uniquely positioned to be able to offer a really neat MakerSpace. And this is a great quote: playrooms and games, animals and plants, wood and nails must take their place side by side with books and words. And that might seem a little bit outside of your university experience, but I think it's important, and I think we can do our part to make hands-on learning part of the university experience. This is a video by Mitch Altman, and Mitch does a great job of explaining. It's at a TED Talks in Brussels. And Mitch Altman is often credited with starting the maker movement in North America. And he's a pretty neat guy. I'll just play a brief clip.
I full of centers of unique community, each supporting the individuals there to explore and do what they love. Each an inspirational source of true education where anyone can learn what they need to live the lives they want to live. Each a vibrant hub of local community, each supporting the other community centers to flourish. This is what the MakerSpace community is all about. And it's already happening in a huge way. And how do I know? Because this is the life I live 24/7, all day, all night, all year round. In the last 63 months, over 1,100 hackerspaces have popped up all over the planet. Seemingly out of nowhere, and seemingly in very unlikely places. What is going on here? There's more popping up all the time. But what's going on is that hackerspaces provide two unique, very deep, universal needs. Two needs that have been way too scarce for way too long. Community and creative expression.
So I'll stop Mitch there. That's available online. I can make it. I can send you the link after this presentation. But essentially, what he gets into is that he went to. He was overseas. He made a thing called TV Be Gone, and it's basically a remote control that will turn off any TV, which I did not know there was a need for. But he designed this, and so it's a little device that will turn off any TV. And what they use them for is in large shopping centers where there's many TVs. They'll use this TV Be Gone to turn it on and off. And he made a lot of money doing it. Anyway, he was overseas at a maker convention in Germany, I think, and decided that, oh, this is a great idea. I should do this in the U.S. And so he's kind of leading the maker movement. And the cool thing is, if I remember doing anything with the MakerSpace, I'll tweet to him and I'll say, hey, do you have any advice about whatever? And he's really quick to reply and really encouraging. And I think that says a lot about the maker community. And one of the points he makes in this clip, and I didn't want to spend too much time watching clips, is that he says, if you want a makerspace, then make a makerspace. Just do it. And that's what we're trying to do. And what he says is start talking about it. And that's what we've done. And I've talked and talked and talked and talked, and I'm talking again today. But I love talking about it. And that's what we're doing, just building that community. And having such a broad range of folks today is really encouraging for me. I think this is really exciting. So start talking about it. And that's what we've done. And we started having informal meetings, and I met with lots of different folks. And then we identified some internal stakeholders. And what's really interesting about that is when we start talking about the makerspace is that for a while I had to tell people about it, but I don't have to tell anyone anymore. People come to me and ask questions, which is really nice. And I think it shows that there's a real need for a space like this in our community. And really quickly on board, we got engineering, computer science, our MBA folks, and the folks that you might not think about. And there are faculty of arts, our information and communication studies, and our folks in education. And they're driving this project as much as the techies in the other sectors are. So I want to give you a brief example in the faculty of arts, especially in our information and communication studies program. So one of our profs was doing a course with iPads, and he was teaching folks how to, teaching students, how to film on an iPad and make movies. And they did this for a little while, and they realized they had a problem, is that they were all walking around holding their iPads, but they wanted to do some still shots with a tripod. So they came to us at the MakerSpace and said, hey, how can we facilitate this? How can we help these students? And what they ended up doing is, and I meant to bring it, but they downloaded an adapter for a tripod that they could put their iPad in. Now it's a really simple example, but this tripod adapter is really nice. It fits the iPad really well, and they started using it in their class. And I think that's a really concrete example of how the technical abilities in the makerspace parlay themselves into the arts, and I think that's where the multidisciplinary approach really comes in. With our education department, many of you probably heard David Alston and the initiative to put MakerSpaces in all the K-12 schools, and they're starting with about 7 schools in various locations in the province. They reached out to us and said, hey, you're doing something in the university where you're also training teachers, how can we work together? So really quickly we decided that, yeah, we can work together for giving our teachers in training here at the university experience in the MakerSpace. So what ends up happening is there's all these links that I just didn't see at first. What I saw at first is our engineers would need a 3D printer, and that would be a nice working relationship. And then Terry came on board and has really driven this project forward. Terry's with our MBA program in faculty business. And we started seeing these links that we just really did, or that I didn't realize existed. So the section of the presentation is building the community and the first phase. So then we built a virtual community that extended outside of the university, because we thought it's really important to get folks here on board, but it's also really important, as Mitch Altman said, and the first video said, the Detroit video, how do you build community? And MakerSpaces are about community. So we did what everyone else does. We made a Twitter handle and a Facebook page, and I can certainly forward these along. And like I say, when we started doing this, I meant to take this slide out. When we started doing this, the online community, really quickly what happens is that I don't have to talk about it anymore. People are coming to me to ask questions. People are coming to our team that we've assembled to ask questions. So it got the buzz going. And so this was geared towards the university community about how do you push this through a university, which are famous for being very slow wheels turning. And what the advice I got early on was identify champions within the university, and Terry and Ken and Peter are champions here, and our Dean of Arts, who's been instrumental in getting this on the radar of the Vice President, really important. So keep in mind, we don't have a MakerSpace yet, right? We're still working towards it. So what do? We start hosting events. So I think this is really cool that we don't have a space, but we're doing all these things. This is I promise you, this is a fabulous picture, if you could see it. It's a panorama picture of our kickoff meeting, which we held on a Thursday afternoon in the spring. It was messy out, and we got 100 people that came out to the launch. We had 100 names on our list, and I was really thrilled. And I did something right on this. I often do things wrong when I do these bigger events, but the things I did right was I invited our Vice President to the event, and I invited the media to the event. And it was big. It was a huge launch, and we were really proud that we were able to bring that many people out to the campus and talk about the MakerSpace. We just held a hackathon. And has anyone participated in a hackathon before? Yeah? It was my first. So I thought, hey, if I'm going to be part of a hackathon, maybe I'll just host one. So we hosted it through the MakerSpace. And at the end of this presentation, I want to show you a quick video on the weekend of the hackathon. I think I find it inspiring. So the hackathon is essentially, this was a civic hackathon. So we went to the city of St. John and got some data. Does anyone here work for the city? Oh, maybe they're online. So the difficult thing, the City of St. John's data is not open, and I'm somewhat of an advocate for open data. Their data is not open, so we had to buy some data from them. So we bought some data. And then we brought 25 coders and developers and marketers and people with ideas to the campus, and we said, tell us what your idea is, and they told us their ideas, and we voted them down to 3 ideas, and then they went for 2 days and wrote code around this open data. Actually, around this data. The data wasn't open, we paid for it. And they came up with 3 really creative products, and these are the things you can do through the MakerSpace, and I think this is really encouraging. This slide is from the 33rd Annual New Brunswick Mathematics Competition. So there was about we had about 100 students come through the MakerSpace that were part of the math competition, and we did some 3D printing. I flew the world's smallest drone around the classroom without hurting anyone, and we brought 100 students from our community into the campus, and they got to experience the MakerSpace, and it was a lot of fun.
There were about 300 that came to campus.
Yeah, okay. So we managed to steal a third of them and bring them in, and they had a lot of fun. And now, you know, the thing about this too, though, is that these students are, they're the STEM students, right? They're into the science, technology, mathematics. But it was super fun talking to them, and they just had a great time. And we did, oh yeah, here's the world's smallest drone. I don't know if you can tell how small that is, but the GoPro is there, and the GoPro.
Behind you.
Yeah, so there's the GoPro, and the drone is like, you know, like the size of that. So it was really fun to fly that around. And the reason, so, you know, why would I fly a drone at the MakerSpace presentation? We're working on a drone that we printed out of our 3D printer. And for those of you that have, you know, been part of this project, you'll realize that I haven't done anything on this in about a month and a half. But it will be a drone eventually. But it's not a drone yet. So yeah, and I think that showed the students that there's a practical use for the 3D printer. It's not just about you know, R2-D2s and chess pieces. It's about creating real life products, and I think that was a nice example for them. So I want to get through the end so we can have a question and answer. So, you know, keep in mind we still don't have a space, right? So here we are hosting students, hosting events. We're looking towards a Raspberry Pi weekend. I have some folks lined up that want to come in and has anyone here played with Raspberry Pi or has designed on Raspberry Pi? No, I'll give a quick, and I'm available all day so I can talk about this stuff. So this is a Raspberry Pi. It's in this case that I printed on the 3D printer. So the Raspberry Pi is that big. It's about the size of a credit card, I suppose. It runs using an SD card. So you flash the SD card with Linux, and it's a small computer. So you plug in your monitor, your keyboard, and your audio, and it's a small computer. And the beauty of it, it costs about 35 bucks, roughly. And we printed some really nifty cases on our 3D printer, which was fun. And they were designed in the UK and distributed to schools to teach kids how to code, and typically in Python. So when the organization that made these, when they built them and distributed them, they thought, oh, maybe we'll sell 100,000. That'd be great. Wouldn't that be great? They just sold their 3 millionth Pi. And what happened is these got out into the hacker community, into the maker community, and people realized all the creative things they could do with them. So there's an I/O port here. So you can run Linux with your I/O port. You can control motors, alarms, relays, solenoids, whatever. I'm not that creative, I guess. I'm running a web server on mine, which is kind of fun, but it's not that creative. But so we're thinking of doing a Raspberry Pi weekend, and we have some folks lined up that want to show us what they're doing with their Raspberry Pis. And we're also thinking of maybe an Arduino workshop. And you know, just keep in mind again that we don't have the MakerSpace. So I think this is really cool that we're able to do all this, we're able to attract all this attention, but we don't have the space yet. What have we done? We hired an engineering student for 3 months who really helped us push this forward. He's gone now, but we have a new MBA student. Kai, thank you for coming today. So Kai is here. It's Kai, right? Yeah. Okay, I should have asked you that before I put you on the spot. But so Kai is coming on with us to develop a business plan and help us figure out what the space is going to be. He's going to liaison with our departments to see what types of tools they need. Because thinking back to that first slide, we could just, you know, Kai and I could sit in a dark room and figure out what we're going to buy. Or we could go out and talk to people and say, what do we need to buy to get you into this space? And I think that's the approach we're going to take. We have some folks with some fabulous ideas that we think we can really facilitate through the space and start to tie our MakerSpace into curriculum at UNB. So what will happen if you do all this? Others will tell your story. This is from True Growth, the True Growth Initiative. So they started talking about the St. John MakerSpace, SJ MakerSpace. Wicked Ideas. This is from our launch. I'd love for you to check this out. It's a really neat article with some great video. And what I think is really cool, Kai, are you on the slide?
Right there to the
On
right.
the right.
Yeah, looks like you.
Are you playing? No? Because you were there, right? Anyway, so what I think is really cool about this is that these are not actors. These are real people, and they're super engaged, right? After the 3D printer was on my desk for about 3 months, I thought, big deal, we have a 3D printer. But what I realized, especially at the launch, is that people are still interested in that. It's cutting edge, and people are interested in playing with it. And they're reading a Make magazine, they're holding the objects, they're talking about it. It was really fun to really capture people's imagination at that launch. Our student newspaper wrote about us, what can you do in the MakerSpace. Enterprise St. John wrote us a letter encouraging the development of the MakerSpace and that they're standing behind us, which is really nice. I went on the CBC and did an interview with Hansen in the morning about the launch and about the MakerSpace, and they're just a really nice community-driven initiative. And this one I think is really cool, and I'm not sure how well you can see it, but it's broken up into 4 quadrants. And this is the drone, or the part of the drone, and that's the 3D printer. And this is going to be a commercial for the New Brunswick Innovation Fund. They called me and said, hey, we're doing this commercial and we want the 3D printer. And I don't want to spoil the commercial. Has anyone seen it yet, or is it out yet? No? There's going to be a commercial. And I don't want to spoil the whole thing, but there's essentially 4 rooms in the shot, and you can kind of see them up here. And they're doing it all in one shot where they pan the camera across, and they're talking about innovation in New Brunswick, and they start with the, well, I won't give that part away, but they start with innovation in New Brunswick, and it turns out we're home to lots of innovation, and
There's one ad on TV now, but it doesn't have your printer on it.
no, what's
I forget what they had. They had Radiant 6, and they had another innovator.
uh-oh, I
They're
could,
good,
maybe we got chopped out of the final version. Does it have anything about a snowblower in it?
No.
Yes.
All right.
It did? Oh, it did. I saw something.
Oh, yes, it did. It had a snowblower from Dalhousie and had Radiant 6.
Yeah.
2 I remember.
All right. Well, I'll have to come over to your house and watch TV. So that's phase 1. Phase 2 is, and probably what you're interested in today, is getting a real space. We've identified a space that we think is going to work for us, Olin Hall 260, which I'm comfortable talking about now because the vice president of the university came to a presentation, and we talked about 260, and he passively said that sounds like a really great idea. And we kept saying 260, and he didn't say no, which means he which means he fully supports our initiative.
It's easier to ask forgiveness.
That's right. And so Terry came up with the moniker of the Computer Lab 2.0, which is, I think, a really nice way to sell it. I mean, I've been stealing this shamelessly, Terry. And for folks that are wondering, like, you know, what the heck goes in a MakerSpace, this is the MakerSpace playbook is a really a great piece of literature on how to start a MakerSpace and what to put in and how to decide what you need. And they give you a number of different levels of MakerSpaces and hackerspaces. And so we're working our way through the playbook to decide what our MakerSpace is going to become. And at this stage, when I started this project, I said to Sean, well, we have lots of community support, we have lots of enthusiasm, we have money, we have all these things, but I don't know what's going to happen. It could die on the spot. And I've always felt this way. But at this point, I think we're actually going to get a real space, and we're going to put some tools in there. And the things we know we're going to put in are the Raspberry Pi and Arduino, the soldering stations, probably a laser cutter with a filter that we can change. And we'll probably either get another replicator or use that one in the space. And it's going to be that kind of white space, and that's where we're headed. Phase 3, so the room, I kind of glossed over it, but the room is in our Olin Hall building, our Faculty of Business, that building. We're undergoing lots of changes on the campus. We just built the Commons. Our library building, the Hans W. Clone building, is empty right now. That will be renovated shortly, and there'll be a lot of folks changing spaces. So we might end up going to a trailer at some point. We might stay in the space we're at, but what we do know is that the building that we're going to, we can't do the black makerspace there, but we can do the white makerspace, and it's a start. And I'm okay with tiptoeing through this, and I'm okay with getting something started. I think, yeah, Ken?
The other thing to bear in mind is there are incompatible uses. You don't want to stick a foundry and an electronics shop in the same space.
Right.
So there's nothing wrong with having this organized with multiple.
Sure, absolutely. And I think the other thing we can do on that point is that we have a lot of, we have workshops here, we have a metal shop, we have, we can even liaise with those departments and do some creative things. But I think, the important thing for us is to capture the momentum that we have now and get something started and get something concrete. And I'm a worrier by nature. I worry about lots of things, and I worry that we will build a space that nobody will use. And I think that's probably a somewhat valid worry, but if we can tie into curriculum and tie in with our departments, we think and tie into the community. Because what I'd like to have happen is that I'd like it to be used by the community. If folks want to design using Raspberry Pis, we want people to be here. In the future, maybe we expand memberships, we host larger events, more complex tools, and maybe we go from a white to a gray, or somewhat a different space. Outcomes, well, like I've said, we hope to tie into lots of curriculum. It'll be, I'm working on some PhD stuff that this might fit into my research. So innovation, what does it do for UNB? And this presentation, like I said, was giving at a university conference, but we've forged some really great connections with the K-12 system, with the entrepreneurial community, the business community. I showed you Enterprise St. John, T4G, lots of folks that are helping us out, the business community, while reinforcing the mission statement that I made up. So that's me. I want to show you, and feel free to follow me on Twitter and email me. And I want to show you a quick video of the hackathon, because I think it'll give you a better idea of what actually took place. And Peter, you have a starring role in this film, so I'm so glad you're here. Peter will sign autographs after it's done. It's brief. So this is a quick 3-minute video about the hackathon weekend that we hosted, and I hope it gives you an idea of what happens on the weekend. And the reason I'm showing it is I think it'll give you an idea of what the MakerSpace does. It brings these diverse people together to do creative things, which I think is really exciting. So, and then I'd love to talk about the toys and the tools and just have a general question and answer.
Top shelf team at Enterprise St. John, obviously hosted by UNBSJ, down here in this state-of-the-art room creativity. And I'm really interested in the content of creativity. I've read a lot of books on it. What do you do with normal brain? The people that actually came out of, it was born out of a very social idea, sort of using data to reduce impaired driving. So that's very much in the DNA of Protexo.
Right.
So as we go forward, we always want to stay true to that aspect of the company and always be supporting initiatives that make a difference.
So what did you...
The events.
I mean, there's so many different ways to define it, really. But you think hackathon, you think of the Matrix or some kid in the basement, with the wires doing something tedious. But really, it's just kind of an excuse to get developers, non-developers, just together and collaborate on some solving problems and come up with something interesting, hopefully.
And what about this idea of the civic hackathon? I think this is a pretty cool idea. Can you just talk about what a civic hackathon is?
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of these happening around the world now. A lot of countries and cities opening up.
I'm evil, sneaking past. I'm on the rose that's fading fast. Blooming rose never lasts. I will escape this out to travel. Run now, better make a move for it. Make a run now, make a move for it. Make a run now, make a move for it.
It's a huge responsibility in terms of governments, whether it's the local level, whether it's the provincial level, or whether it's the federal level, to make sure that we provide folks that are represented in this room today with as much data as possible, so that they can develop the most sophisticated, powerful tools to create more livable cities, more livable communities, and create real opportunities in all of our sectors.